Hi, everybody. On the next edition of Playmakers, the gentleman who does all the talking with the Indiana Fever. He's Pat Boylan. He's my special guest. We're going to break it all down from Caitlin Clark. Can this team win the title? And what about the Indiana Pacers? Is this the big year for them? It's next right here on Playmakers. Hi, I'm Dave Calabro, and I've covered some of the biggest moments in sports. But the stories that matter most are the ones that you rarely hear, because the game is decided long before the final whistle or the checkered flag. These are the people who make the big plays. Welcome to Playmakers. Brought to you by Indiana Members Credit Union.
This is Paul. He loves running, music, and DIY home projects. In fact, he's remodeling his kitchen thanks to a home equity line of credit from Indiana Members Credit Union. They connected him with a loan officer, got him approved at a great low rate, and made it easy for him to make his monthly payment from anywhere thanks to IMCU's digital banking. Looks like Paul can do it all with a little help from IMCU.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a big show. It's Playmakers. Dave Calabro hanging out. Thank you to IVJ Media and Indiana Members Credit Union. And our special guest is Pat Boylan. If you turn on the radio or television these days, you probably hear this young guy doing Fever, doing the Indiana Pacers, just finishing your what season?
This finished 12th season with the Pacers. And
wait, you're not that old. You're like 18.
I was going to say, the best compliment about your intro was that you still called me young. I'm hanging on to those words. I don't know technically when you lose them, but I was fortunate to start very early, but this is 12th Fever season and just finished 12th Pacers.
That is wild. I worked at Channel 13, of course, and we're running into him young days. You were an intern at Channel 6?
Channel 8 and Channel 6 over the summers.
Why not 13?
I don't think I got the invite. I don't think I get the call. At that point, I'm not sure I reached the level of necessary Dave Calabro intern. But AC took me, so.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on your journey here. I want to start at the very beginning before we get into all things Fever, because, there's only a few thousand things to talk about with the Indiana Fever. Carmel High School.
Yeah.
Did you get the bug to be a broadcaster? Tell me about Pat as a kid. What were you up to?
Yeah, I have known that I've wanted to do play-by-play as long as I can remember. I can't even remember a time when I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do. Back when most kids want to be astronauts or firefighters, I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. Had no idea if I was any good at it. Had no idea if I'd one day be sitting here with somebody like you, but I just knew I wanted to do it. And it goes back to when I was a kid. My parents didn't let me have a TV in my room. I'm a 90s kid.
Great parenting. Good job, Mom and Dad.
Yeah. We'll see how good the parenting goes as the story continues. But I'm a 90s kid. So if you think about like when you are really in your prime for just raw sports fandom, you know this. You covered all of it here. Yeah. I had 90s Pacers, Reggie Miller, Knicks Bulls. Tamika Catchings comes around in the early 2000s. Peyton Manning is here in 1998. IU has a Final Four run in there. Butler basketball's getting good. Purdue football has a year or two in there. I'm a St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan. What I'm getting at is it was prime time to be a kid and a sports fan in this area. And sometimes I wonder if that wasn't the case, would I have found this passion? And the other aspect at play was you're, of course, on this list, just the broadcasters that we had in this city. So my parents wouldn't let me have a TV in my room, but I did have a radio. And so oftentimes I'm going to bed. There's still a game going on. I turn my radio on loud enough that I could hear, but not loud enough that my parents could hear. And I just became enamored with how Mark Boyle, Chris Denari, Bob Lamey, Don Fisher, numerous others could call the game on the radio in a way that I felt like I was there, or at least watching on TV, even though I obviously wasn't. And I think it was kind of that moment where the light bulb clicked, where I'm going, like, let's use Mark Boyle as an example. Wait a minute. So this guy gets to travel around with the Indiana Pacers. He gets free access into NBA arenas. He gets to call the game for a passionate fan base. And I'm pretty sure they pay him to do all of these things. And it was that kind of epiphany that I had that was like, wow, I can't think of anything possibly cooler. And from that day on, that's kind of been my North Star.
That's pretty cool. So Carmel High School, fantastic radio, television program. And you just immersed yourself in that? Is that all? It all got going?
Yeah, I was really lucky. You know, nowadays it's a lot easier for a high school to have a radio and a TV station with the internet. You can stream and all of that. But as a, probably 15-year-old, I got the chance to cut my teeth and was really doing it back as as a sophomore in high school, calling Carmel JV boys basketball, and it was just a great outlet and an opportunity to get reps at that young of an age. Gosh, I'd probably go back and listen to them and want to plug my ears, but it was such a good opportunity. And and when I was around that age too, had a couple of just fantastic experiences. When I was in middle school, actually, so a little bit before this, I had a career day project where I had to follow somebody around, and so I bugged Chris Denari. And if anybody knows Chris Denari, fantastic broadcaster, Hall of Fame level career. But if there's one thing that defines him, is he's just an immaculate human being. And so he was willing to take 14-year-old me around. At the time, he's doing Butler basketball, so he doesn't have the Pacers TV job yet. But he's doing Butler basketball, and he's doing Fox 59, and he's doing the Indiana Fever. And I sat with him for a Butler basketball game, courtside. He's calling the game. I got the headset on. Players are going back and forth as if I needed any more.
This?
Yeah, as if I needed any more evidence that this is what I wanted to do. I was like, that's it, 100%, door closed. This is what I'm pushing. A few years later, I'm still in high school, and the story's kind of funny. You're tangentially involved. I get a knock on my door at our house, our home, and my dad answers. I'm up playing video games or something. He yells for me to come down. This guy's at the door. I've never seen him in my life, and you'll at least know of him. Maybe you even know him well. He's this guy named Lonnie Perkins, and he is a big-time voiceover artist. And when I was at Carmel, I had a sports show, a radio show with a guy named Sam Agee, who's still in the industry as well. And Lonnie happened to catch it on the radio. Now, this guy had lived down the street, and I had never seen him in my life. So it's not like we'd come in and touch a lot. And he went down into his studio, and he recorded all of these spots and these liners for our radio show. So as you have all these high school kids, pumping up their shows and doing commercials, we had Lonnie Perkins, who was the voice of numerous major brands, including WTHR.
Yes, yeah.
And so, you tune in. Here's Dave Calabro with sports on Channel 13, like that, but better than that, because that's what he does. And he recorded all these spots and these liners for our silly little 17-year-old high school radio show. But he then took it one step further. And when I told him kind of what I wanted to do, he goes, well, I know Bob Lamey well, voice of the Colts, and I know the guys and gals at Channel 13 well. So why don't we make a day of it? So I got to sit down. I got to have lunch with Bob Lamey, which was so cool. I got to go to the WTHR studios, meet a bunch of other people, and sit at the news desk and all of that. And I just remember like how massively significant that was in my formative years. And it's funny because as I'm sitting here, and on Monday I'm going through, kind of organizing my thoughts a little bit for what I'm going to talk about with you. And this story is in my head. And lo and behold, I get a Facebook notification, and a Facebook memory notification pops up. And I know this is also an audio podcast, so this version might not be the best for the audio version, but I've got a photo. This is me and one other guy at the WTHR
that is awesome.
news desk.
Yeah, sitting at the news desk, checking out.
17
You're
years
already 12
ago,
feet tall in this picture.
The memory reads 17 years ago,
Okay.
as of June 22nd, was
so
that
cool.
day. And I'm sure you have similar stories that you remember when you were growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get those kind of experiences as a kid, they're just magnified and they're so special. And
I think you learned early on from about paying it forward and what somebody in the industry did for you. All those people are willing to say yes. And I tell young people all the time, regardless of what kind of business you're going into, just make the phone call, make the ask to somebody. Hey, I'm curious about engineering. Hey, I hear you're very successful. Can I spend an hour with you? Right?
No question. I mean, it's one of the things that I learned and actually couldn't believe. And still to this day, I still do it. I still reach out to broadcasters that I admire and say, hey, would you mind looking at my work? And it was amazing back then as a little punk high schooler, how many people I could reach out to, and they'd respond to email or they'd give me a call back and they'd be willing to help. And I think it's because, now that I'm kind of wearing the other shoe, we all remember getting that lift up back when we were in high school and in college and young professionals. And so we want to be able to do that same thing for the next class, the next generation.
So then you go to Ball State, got heavily involved there doing play-by-play, right?
Yeah. So another good fortune moment. David Letterman donates this massive amount of money to Ball State as I'm a high school senior. So I really wanted to do this big college tour and look at all these places around the country, but it was impossible to really
no-brainer,
look
right?
elsewhere. It was a no-brainer. This building's brand new. It's a great facility. It's a great school for broadcasting anyway. So Yeah, I went there, got a ton of reps, a ton of experience, and Chris Taylor at SportsLink was just emerging as well, and that's now a major, well-known program. It was in its infancy back then. But all those experiences, at the end of the day, I felt like when I was graduating, I had 7 years of real-life experience, even though I didn't. If I made a mistake on a college radio or TV station, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I felt like year one for me, which was in Bismarck, North Dakota, but I felt like year one for me was really year 8. So I owe so much to Ball State and Carmel and the opportunities provided by those two schools.
Then you go to Bismarck, North Dakota.
You nailed it.
Just where every sport's...
How everybody draws it up, right?
Right.
Isn't that how it goes?
And people don't realize in our industry what it takes to get in. It's kind of like playing sports. You got to make the JV, then you got to make the varsity, and hopefully you get to play at the college level, and then to make the pros. It's a whole nother step, isn't it?
No question. And this company called Beck Sports out there, it was pretty unique. It offered 80, 90 TV play-by-play reps a year.
Wow.
Your brother, who has made a very successful career doing TV play-by-play, and I know you know this as well, it's very hard to find. It's one of those catch-22s because they tell you, well, we're not going to hire you unless you have TV play-by-play experience. Well, how do you get the experience without getting the opportunity in the first place?
Yeah.
So that's what led me out there. It's actually turned into a pretty interesting pipeline job because there's numerous other guys, Mick Tidrow, the voice at Ball State, Noah Reed, who does national stuff for Fox Sports 1, a few other guys, including the pre, half, and post on TV for the Milwaukee Bucks, all ended up coming from that same North Dakota station. And, was there for a year. It was very cold, but the reps were great.
You're working. You didn't care, right?
Yeah. The only thing I didn't love about it was I was just worried I was going to get stuck there, which is no disrespect to North Dakota. But had you told me I was only going to be there for a year, I truly enjoyed every bit of the experience except waking up and walking outside and it being negative 10 degrees. And when it's negative 10 degrees, your body just instinctively coughs. You have to get it out before your body's willing to take in 10 degrees.
Then you get the phone call to come back home.
Yeah.
What was your first job with the Pacers?
It was, a version of what I have now. So Kevin Lee had a version of the job that I have now. Long-time broadcaster in this city, very talented, very polished, has done a lot of stuff, but I think people probably know him best for his work with motorsports and with IndyCar, which he still does. And his plate was getting too full, and they needed somebody whose plate wasn't so full. And a theme of this will just be, the good fortune that I've had, but I'm 24 years old, just turned 24. And realistically, like if you would have looked at all of the candidates for this job and ranked them by experience and ranked them by polish, I'm near the bottom, if not at the bottom of the list. But fortunately, my boss at the time, Jamie Burns, and then our president at the time, Rick Fuson, they wanted to bring in somebody who was younger that they could develop. I think they probably saw something in me that I didn't even see at the time. And if they don't want to do that, or if Kevin Lee, when I'm 1 year out, isn't getting all of these other opportunities, I'm hopefully still in the industry. I'm hopefully still doing something fulfilling. But I don't like to think about it because I'm so lucky where I am and feel so great about how things have gone the last 12 seasons. And so, when I started, I was doing, which I still do, half sideline for Pacers radio, post-game on Pacers TV. I was doing a little play-by-play for Fever. Denari was the full-time guy then. I took over for him in 2018 full-time. So my full-time Fever run starts just after Tamika Catching's era ends, but I did have a couple games where Tamika was there. And I'm just extremely fortunate because the Pacers and the Fever have believed in me and they've continued to up my responsibilities and what I do there. And the obvious other piece of good luck is we get a transformational, generational star fall into our city's and our organization's lap in 2024.
Yeah, I want to go in that direction. We want to talk about all things Fever and the drama. We're recording this in June 22nd, I believe. Is it 22nd, 23rd? The Fever just had their big showdown with Phoenix the night before. Caitlin Clark involved in how would you describe what happened? Alyssa Thomas from the Phoenix Mercury came down hard on her, knee to the groin and a fist to the neck.
Yeah.
How would you describe that scene?
I would
let's start from the very beginning before we get into that.
Sure.
Let's start when she's drafted.
Sure.
I was there in Brooklyn and it was like Elvis showed up. I will never forget being there. I've covered a lot of major events, but Every fan knew what bus that Caitlin Clark was riding on. She shows up. There are thousands of people. I mean, they closed down traffic just to get a glimpse of Caitlin Clark. It's absolutely wild. When did you first realize how crazy her star was?
I don't know if there was a moment, but I remember being at our draft lottery party at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. She did not yet declare that she was coming out yet. She could have taken one more year. I believe it would have been a COVID fifth year, but she had gone through 4 years at Iowa. And I remember winning that lottery and just thinking, this has the potential to be one of the most massive moments in the history of Pacer sports and entertainment, and really our whole city.
Yes.
Because at that point, she had blossomed into a megastar in the way that we have never seen before. For women's basketball. And the concept that it could be moving here was just, it was hard to wrap your head around. And to be honest with you, Dave, it still is a little hard to wrap my head around. Even though we've had, as we are talking here, early-ish into year number 3, there's still part of me that, can't believe that this massive player, storyline person is here in our city. But I think just following her at Iowa, you knew it was going to be a big deal, and you knew that those fans were coming with her. They weren't going away just because she was leaving Iowa, and you knew it had the ability to turn into packed arenas, sold-out games, home and road. So I don't know if there was one moment where it was just like, wow, the light bulb went off, but it changed overnight. It changed dramatically overnight.
You go on the road with the team. What's it like being like team hotel? Caitlin Clark's coming in. Is it crazy?
We have a lot of security people who do a really good job. Yeah. It's cool watching the bus pull up and you just see throngs of fans. I mean, lining the hotel, lining the arena. I remember one of the biggest scenes was in Dallas her rookie year. We're pulling into the arena and there must have been, 500 people just lining up along the arena with signs and posters. It was surreal, and to go to these visiting WNBA arenas, and many of them are moving into these bigger facilities for the games specifically because it can attract so much attention. And you're used to, as an announcer for a team, when you go on the road and your team makes a shot, there's kind of a typical noise you're used to hearing, which is one of two things: either nothing or kind of, groans and antsy. Yeah, exactly.
Defense.
You're not used to hearing cheers. You're not used to hearing screaming. You're not used to hearing, in many cases, louder noises and responses from the fans when your team's shot goes in.
Would you compare it to back in the day when, say, Kobe or Jordan or LeBron came to town?
Even more, because those for most of those cases, I wasn't here for all of them, but I was here for the end of Kobe. I was here for Steph Curry, LeBron James.
Yeah. In
most of those cases, the Pacers were fielding very competitive teams too.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that the Fever weren't playing other good WNBA teams, but it's not quite apples to apples just because so many of those people were there specifically for her. And I know that was the case when Kobe and those guys came to town too, but you still had a good contingent of Pacers fans who were showing up every single night. The Pacers were good during a lot of those runs.
Caitlin Clark as a person, I don't know her. You know her. How would you describe her?
I would love to sit down with you and kind of get to pick your brain on athletes, the major athletes that you've covered, and kind of compare and contrast. Because I wasn't a media member for Peyton Manning, but I do know people that have crossed paths or know both well, and that seems to be, Eddie White, who has loads of experience in PR, corporate and team PR. That's the comparison he always makes. And I could be lucky enough.
By the way, that's a great comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Peyton is, if you're saying she's a lot like Peyton, that's a good thing to be.
In so many aspects.
So she understands her role, responsibility that comes with being a superstar.
Not only does she understand it, she's an expert, an absolute expert. The awareness that she has continues to blow me away because I think go back to when you were 22 years old. I said the wrong thing a whole lot.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
When I was 23 years old, I said the wrong thing a whole lot. When I was
short fuse. Hey, what do you mean? Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. I mean, her ability to understand the moment, to be the person in it, to be so self-aware of all the things that come with it, but also to be so self-aware to not complain about some of the very realistic challenges and difficulties that come with being in that big of a spotlight. I mean, she can't go anywhere without it being a media circus, and she handles it with such humility and with such grace. I literally don't think I've ever heard her say the wrong thing, especially with a microphone in front of her face. And when you think about her age, it's remarkable. And if I'm lucky enough to do this and have the kind of career that you did, and maybe one day I'm sitting in your shoes, I think it's very probable that I would be able to look back on my entire run, hopefully, if it's with Pacer Sports Entertainment the whole time, and say, that is the athlete that had not just the biggest spotlight, not just, the most attention, but also the one that handled it the best and was the most made for that moment. I always think about this, like, talent doesn't pick the person, right? Talent is talent. And then the person behind that is its own totally separate thing. The fact that these two are at the level that they are with this one person, it's remarkable. And I think for those that have followed sports in our city, despite I was a fan going to Colts games, I loved Peyton Manning. I didn't cover Peyton Manning like you did, but I think that's one of the best comparisons you can make.
How would you describe Caitlin on court? I know you work for the Indiana Fever but some people complain. I asked a bunch of hardcore Fever fans to send me some questions, and a theme that came up was talking about how she carried herself. She got a technical earlier in the season for clapping, and some people thought that wasn't very classy.
Sure.
What would you say to that?
Well, she's certainly fierce.
Putting you on the spot, man.
Hey, that's what we got all these lights in here for.
I know, right?
She is as fierce of a competitor as I have ever met. And by the way, as I'm making these comparisons in that last answer, we've had some great ones run through here, and I shouldn't go any further without talking about Tamika Catchings, who is a legend and maybe the greatest of all time. And
she was my first guest on Playmakers.
Perfect. I mean, you want to talk about somebody that understood the moment too. I mean, she absolutely qualifies, and more recently, what Tyrese Haliburton has given the Pacers is phenomenal, and he has an incredible awareness about himself too. But we're talking about another level of attention and spotlight with Caitlin Clark. I mean, she wants to win as bad, if not more, than anybody that I've ever been around. And I think at times, greatest strength can also be a challenge for some athletes, and just that raw, fierce, competitive nature at times can lead to moments that I think she will be the first one to tell you, I could have, maybe handled a little bit better. And that's part of the awareness that she gets. Even when she has a moment where she gets a technical foul, she will usually be the first one to tell you post-game, as long as it was fair.
Legit. Yeah.
There have been a few that I don't know if I would qualify as that. There was a recent one that I don't think would qualify as that. But she has the awareness to understand that, maybe she could have handled things better. She's not one of those holier than thou, I am perfect, everything I do is perfect. And so I think for many athletes, I mean, look, she has the spotlight, so she gets the attention on this, but I mean, how many NBA and WNBA players do I see that get technical fouls? Well, it's a ton of them.
And the things you're describing about her at a young age are exactly what I would have said about Peyton back in the first couple of years of his go. Let's see. One other question. Since Clark arrived, are you being bombarded with emails, social media, and comments about how they're describing the players and coaches? Have you had to pull back on how much information you put out there publicly? Does that make sense?
Yeah and no. And as Caitlin Clark has come into our orbit, it has done something that, frankly, I didn't think we would see within any recent window of time, which is the Fever get talked about at the level the Pacers get talked about. Our TV ratings on WTHR are Pacers-esque. And so that is so cool, because I go out in the community, or I go on Sports Talk Radio. Sports Talk Radio actually wants to talk to me now.
About the Fever.
Yeah, about the Fever. Exactly. So I don't approach broadcasting a game any differently than I did back in 2018. When I started, it was right after Tamika Catchings. There were unquestionably some rough years. I think there was a time where I probably, as a play-by-play broadcaster, had the worst record of all North American sports play-by-play announcers. That's quickly changing, but there was a time there where that was probably true. And, there weren't 17,000 people in our building, but I always approached it the same way because it's kind of a one-on-one perspective. Whether there's 100,000 people watching, the Ion games we get to do reach the low millions, which is also just confounding to me to believe that I've called a game for 1 million people. But at the same time, my duty is to the fan, and I think of it as a specific fan when I'm broadcasting. And whether there are 5,000 people or 100,000 people or 1 million people watching, I want to handle that the exact same way because I owe it to that person to call the best game that I can.
And the Fever and the Pacers, I got to ask this question, don't monitor. You're free to say and describe what you see, as long as you're factual.
There has not been a moment in my 12 years here where somebody has come up to me and said, you need to do this a certain way.
I love it.
You need to handle this a certain way. Now, they give me feedback, of course, and that's important. You want a boss and an organization that will give you constructive feedback. But never once has anybody even come close to saying, you need to put on red shaded glasses. You need to do this a certain way. Because I believe my style, it's probably a little old school. When I'm calling a game, and if you're watching, I want you to know that I want the Fever to win because I do want the Fever to win, but I want to call the game in a manner that's fair. So when I say this moment with Alyssa Thomas should have been reviewed, should have been a flagrant one, possibly even a flagrant two. When those moments happen, I want you to know, well, he doesn't talk about the refs a lot. So when he's talking about the refs, it's probably something significant here. And if you were not a fan of the Indiana Fever, I want you to enjoy the game as well. So, I am on the Fever side of things calling a game, but I never want to be the guy that's full-out homer that you cannot trust.
Love it. Who's been the most surprising player to you this year?
Good question. I would say I'll go with Myisha Hines-Allen because not a major name, but when you say surprising, I'm not going to pick Caitlin Clark because I know what she's capable of.
Right.
Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, same thing. Yeah.
Aaliyah Boston,
Yeah. I really thought the Fever were going to get this version of Sophie Cunningham last year, and then she just dealt with injuries the whole year. Never really came to fruition. She had a month or so where she was playing like that, and then another injury hit. But when Myisha Hines-Allen was brought in, she was kind of brought in as a backup big that, it was going to be a physical, imposing kind of force, but she wasn't catching ESPN front page headlines when the Fever signed her. And I think she's been really good at understanding her role. If there are moments where she needs to be a quote unquote enforcer, she hasn't shied away from that. And she has worked her way into a larger role than at the beginning of the season. So I've been really impressed by her.
This team has so much potential. Can they make a run for the title? Do you expect them to be there at the end? I mean, were they third in the East right now?
I do. I do think they can make a run at title, and I do expect them to be there at the end because, a few reasons. One of them, I was looking this up the other day, Stephanie White coached teams have every single year, the back half of the season has outperformed the front half of the season. In 2015, that was her first year head coaching the Fever. That team, I believe, started 3-6. And ends up a win away from a WNBA championship. They went to the finals. They took on Minnesota that had 4 Olympians, and they took them to the do-or-die Game 5. A lot, actually, like the Pacers story of 24-25. Very, very similar. You look at the next year, they got off to a tough start. They end up making the playoffs. You look at last year, and that team loses Caitlin Clark, only plays 13 games, loses Sophie Cunningham, loses just about everybody. The front office is picking up players that aren't even on teams. They end up in overtime to go to the WNBA finals. So Stephanie White teams have a way of being their best when they need to be their best. And while, I think the team would be the first to tell you they wish maybe they had another win or two at this point, from a big picture perspective, how could you not love what you've seen from Caitlin Clark here so far? She looks like, at bare minimum, top 3 for the MVP. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston are all averaging career highs in scoring this year, which I think is a great sign. Wow. So there's a lot they still have to work on. Defense notably, there have been a few games lately where the Fever have put up eye-popping offensive numbers and they haven't always led to wins. But that's also kind of Stephanie White's bread and butter, is the defensive end of things. So my prediction, of course, I am a glass half full person.
Come on,
anyway.
Homer. They're going to win the title?
Yeah.
We're going to have a parade?
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be a parade?
I think they've got a great shot at it.
Cool.
I think they're going to be at the end of the season. I think they're going to be playing at a championship level. Take some luck, take some good fortune, takes the caliber athletes that I think that the Fever have. So I think they will, at bare minimum, be in the conversation 2 months from now.
Yeah, I think they're deep. Stephanie White, love her. Give me your take on that relationship with Caitlin Clark, which gets every time they look at each other. Oh my God! Social media, there's something. How would you describe their relationship? You're around that.
Yeah, they are both extreme competitors.
They are, aren't they?
Stephanie will be the first to tell you that she did not have, of course, the professional career capabilities that Caitlin Clark has had. Yeah. And of course, at college, too. I mean, Caitlin Clark is the best college player statistically in, at minimum, women's basketball history. But we all know here, Stephanie White led Purdue to a championship. Yeah. She had a fantastic college career, Miss Basketball as well, one of the best in the state. And there are way more parallels than there are differences with those two. They're both fiery. They're both competitive. But, there are more than a handful of moments during the season where Tyrese Haliburton and Rick Carlisle go back and forth. There are multiple moments throughout a WNBA season where Becky Hammon of the Las Vegas Aces is going, back and forth with one of her players and having heated moments. And in many ways, because of the spotlight that we have, but also it's a little unique. It seems like people treat it differently.
True.
How many times have you seen in your career, not just basketball, but like a coach and a player not even have a heated conversation? They're just both active, pumped up, going back and forth. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of times.
Part of the game.
Right. I mean, I can think of Peyton Manning, a few moments with Peyton Manning.
Tony, he and Dungy, there was always something going on.
Wasn't there a classic, like, dang it, Donald kind of?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there was always something going on. Yeah, interesting. I want to switch gears to the Pacers.
Sure.
Gee, you get to do that as well.
Yeah.
What a ride last year. Let's go back to that moment first. Of just becoming a part of the Pacers, growing up, watching the Pacers and the Knicks and all the glory days of the Pacers, and now you're working for them. When was your aha moment working with the Pacers where you're like, wow, this is, they're paying me to do this?
I've got a couple. One of them is just day one, game one, preseason game one. There's 10,000 people in the building. The game doesn't matter. Nobody starters are playing. But for me, it was game one. So that was just to be able to sit, do the pregame show, work with Mark Boyle. When I was talking about those voices at the beginning of the of the podcast, Mark Boyle, Chris Denari, I get to call those two coworkers. I get to work 90 games a year with Mark Boyle. I get to work closely with Chris Denari on Pacers TV. So to have that opportunity, that was an aha moment. Again, 24 years old. I'm basically right out of college. And I was in that building just a year and a half previous for Pacers and Heat game 6, which sent it back to Miami for game 7 of the conference finals as a fan in a shirt with a beer. And now a year and a half later,
I'm on the front row.
I'm on the front row. Yeah. So that was a moment. Probably the best story that I have as it relates to that is in 2019, December of 2019. And I'm actually right next door to where we are right now. I'm in the MS building. It's Saturday morning. It's 10:30 a.m. We have a show called Pacers Weekly that runs from 10 to 11. We still have it, by the way. Shout out Pacers Weekly.
Check it out.
And I get a call from my boss, and I'm on air, so I don't answer. And then I get another call from my boss, and I'm like, this guy knows that I have this show right now. He's my boss.
On air.
Something's up. We can laugh about it now because everything ends up fine. But Chris Denari had found himself in a ton of pain that morning, ends up going to the hospital, ends up being a kidney stone. My boss calls me at 10:45 a.m. I am in sweatpants and a t-shirt, and he says, hey, Chris Denari is in pain. We're sending him to the hospital. We just booked a flight for you. It's in 2 hours. Get home, get your suit, get to the airport. We need you to call the game. Pacers are in New York City that night at Madison Square Garden, and my head is spinning. And what I didn't tell him, because I didn't want to add any more conflicts to all of this, he's like, figure out the show, get out of the show, cancel the show. Whatever you have to do. The show doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. Get in your suit and get home. But I hadn't showered. I woke up, rolled out of bed, and went it's radio. No one knows. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh gosh. So I got a shower too. So I take the quickest shower I've ever taken. I grab my suit. I sprint to the airport. I get there just in time to catch the plane. I think many people know, but most play-by-play announcers have a board that is like kind of the roster on steroids. And for a Fever game, I spend 8 to 10 hours a game putting this board together. And I'm supposed to call this game in 6 hours. That's not possible. So I'm sitting on this tiny little flight to LaGuardia and in the back, and I'm cramped, and I'm just writing things down on this manila folder. Gosh, I get to Madison Square Garden at 4:30, and it was a wild experience. And at Madison Square Garden, you sit courtside. So I'm sitting right there. Clyde Frazier is where you are to me in this. And I'm going, what in the world is going on? And I had two just extremely great things work in my favor. For somebody that didn't feel fully prepped to call the game on TV, one was the Knicks had just fired their head coach the day before. And I don't mean to take that as a positive, somebody losing their job, but it allowed us to have this overwhelming storyline going in. David Fizdale had just been fired, and the game was fantastic. It was a 2-point game in the final seconds. The Pacers fouled Julius Randle with like 0.5 seconds left, down 2 at the line, hits the first, misses the second. Pacers win by 1 in New York City. I am on the plane home, back in my bed that night going, what in the world is going on? I have had my wedding canceled 6 days before the wedding because a hurricane came through. I've had a car crash into the front of my house and end up in my office, and neither of those are the craziest days of my life. That Knicks game at Madison Square Garden ranks as the craziest day of my life, and it certainly was an aha moment getting to sit there and call the game courtside at Madison Square Garden when I woke up that morning at the Emmis Building right next door in sweatpants and a T-shirt.
That's pretty fabulous. That's really cool. This year, Pacers, Tyrese Haliburton back. We all know what we rode through this season. What's your take on the upcoming version of the Pacers?
Well, his health and his capabilities are the most important thing to me, to what they're able to do. I think you have to have some cautious optimism by watching Jason Tatum, a similar level star with the Boston Celtics, who unfortunately went through the same thing a month and a half before Tyrese did. Mm-hmm. It allows you to kind of watch, hopefully, what Tyrese will be experiencing just a little bit ahead. And because he got hurt in round 2 and Tyrese got hurt in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, which is also one of those memories you'll just never forget, right? Being in Oklahoma City and watching that happen, like there's no way this is how the story ends. It could end with a loss, obviously, but there's no way it ends like this. Right. I think you have to be optimistic watching what Jason Tatum was able to do at the end of the year for Boston. And so if he can come back, look, he's probably not going to be 100% Game 1 or maybe even Game 10 or maybe even Game 30. But I thought the front office move to get Ivica Zubac was massive because you're in a window here where you just went to the conference finals 2 years ago. Last year, you're in the NBA Finals and you're a win away from the finals. This is one of those windows that doesn't come along all that often. And you had to figure out the center situation. And so to get a guy that the last full healthy season that he had, which was 2 years ago, Zubac here, was a borderline all-star. He actually ends up a spot or two away from All-NBA, which is top 15 players in the league. I mean, they figured the center position out. So you look at their roster, and it's deep. It's got Tyrese, who had the magical run up front. It's got Pascal Siakam, who helped carry the Pacers to that spot last year. But there's two big aspects that are going to have to be figured out, which is Tyrese himself. There's a whole confidence angle to all of this, too, that's not physical, that it's mental. Can you trust yourself? That first time you take that step back, where's your mental? And it's impossible for that to be perfect in Game 1. So that's going to take some time. And the other aspect is Zubac is a fantastic center, but he is almost the polar opposite of the center Miles Turner was. Totally opposite player. Miles' strengths versus Zubac's strengths are opposite. So making that work and figuring out how that will work, very confident in it working. But again, Game 1, you got a very new center and a point guard coming off of an Achilles. I would love to see you in late November and be talking about the Pacers being, 15-7 or whatever. And I'm not saying that can't be, but I think it's going to take some time. Yeah.
Braden Smith, Pacers just picked up Braden Smith. Kind of Purdue fans are probably excited about that.
How could you not?
I mean, what kind of role will he have?
Yeah.
Learn how to learn from.
I mean, learn from two of the best in Tyrese Haliburton and T.J. McConnell. Yeah. Everybody's going to want to make that T.J. McConnell comparison.
Exactly, yeah.
I think it's fair because everybody wants to make it because of the lift that he brings. And I think if you're a Purdue fan and you're a Pacers fan, they're different because McConnell comes off the bench and he's 100 miles an hour for 15, 20 minutes a game. And Braden Smith is probably the best player on a team that nearly won a championship, at least over the course of time. The best player on Purdue, obviously Edie and Trey Kaufman-Renn. I mean, there were great players there too. But he wasn't the Energizer Bunny at Purdue. But I think you can see some similarities in how he sees the game. Probably right now already a better shooter. McConnell has some aspects that he's, of course, better at. But I think it's two great people to learn from. And the one thing that Haliburton and McConnell have in common is they both see the game at an elite level. I mean, they're both high-level assisters. They see things before they happen. And if you watch Purdue over the last 4 years, I mean, that's Braden Smith to a T. So sure. I think he's got maybe the two. If you're in his position, forget the Indiana ties, forget the Purdue thing just for a moment, and let's just look at NBA team he's joining. Yeah. Tyrese Haliburton and T.J. McConnell, if you're in his position, I'm not sure there's a better 1-2 in the league that you want to learn from than those two.
Man, this has been fun. I've enjoyed this. Tell people where they can catch you. And
yeah,
you're on social media, obviously.
At Pat Boylan Pacers is my handle on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter's really where I do probably my most engaging with the fans. And you know, our digital teams, Fever and Pacers, they put out a ton of good content. I work with them. And, you know, just kind of to circle back on some of the questions you were asking me at the beginning of the year, you know, as a kid, I think of this full circle moment, and I'm as I'm going through the stories at WTHR, I mean, and I just like think about the unbelievable fortune that I have here. I'm listening to Chris Denari and Mark Boyle growing up. I get to call them coworkers. You know, I'm at WTHR. I'm meeting you 17 years ago. Here we are. And I have the great fortune of getting to call the Indiana Fever on WTHR too. I mean, it's just amazing how all of this has come around. And listen, I know fans out there, their number one thing that they care about is, of course, wins and losses for the Fever and the Pacers and all of that. And the Pacers were just in the NBA Finals, and the Fever were an overtime away from the WNBA Finals. So they've more than held up their end of the bargain in terms of wins and losses here lately. But the other thing that I just kind of want to say is just how fortunate we are in this city, and me personally, to get to work for the Simons and what they have meant. Yes. And your brother, who has had a long, successful career, can speak to this. Every team is not run the same way. No. He is your brother. For those who don't know, has had a long and successful career as a play-by-play announcer in Seattle and in Portland, among many other stops. I bring him up because I get to see him once a year, and as other, and I'm not saying him with this specifically at all. He's one of the legends in our industry too, but. As other employees and broadcasters come around, you just hear different stories about how things are run. And Pacer Sports and Entertainment employs hundreds of people, and it's a wonderful place to work. And when I started here, I knew I wanted to work for the Pacers because I grew up as a big Pacers fan. I grew up as a Fever fan. So that was checking so many boxes of dream job. But one of the biggest reasons why I'm hopeful, my plan A, there have been opportunities, especially as Caitlin Clark have come in, where other teams have called, but the reason that this is my plan A and this is where I want to be and what I want to do, and in large part, is because of the infrastructure and what working for Pacer Sports and Entertainment is like. And Rick Fuson for so many years, the president, Mel Raines now, my bosses, Jamie Burns, now Matt Scott, have just been tremendous. And I can't imagine a better place to work. If I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, like this is where I would want to work after experiencing it. And again, I know the fans listening to this will say, but I want my team to win. Of course. I get that. I'm not saying that you should care about this more than that. Not at all. But I hope people understand, A, the importance of, bringing the Pacers to Indianapolis and keeping them here and what that's meant to the sports scene in our city. And B, for an organization that employs hundreds and hundreds of people, what a good place it is to work. And that really isn't always the case. And for numerous reasons, including those, I feel so grateful to be here. At the end of the day, I'm a kid from Indianapolis.
There you go, man.
Who grew up listening,
living a dream,
listening
baby.
to you and to many voices on the radio and on TV. So it's so cool to get to do this here and now.
Well, thanks for sharing the insight. This has been a lot of fun, and thanks for being on Playmakers with Pat Boylan. Get after it. It's time for a parade, man. We need a fever parade with this guy leading the way.
I hope so. We'll see how things look in September, but I'm optimistic.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Playmakers, brought to you by IBJ Media. I'm Dave Calabro. I hope you'll subscribe on YouTube or wherever else you get your podcast. Until next time, we'll see you later.